Hello and welcome to this webinar. We're going to go through remote working and the impact of COVID and what lessons have we actually learned. Obviously, the aim is that I've got some information that I've put together on things from my experience and then people I've spoken to, but it's aimed to be interactive to prompt some questions. So if we just have a quick look at where we're at. Okay, in the UK, we've gone through 3 different lockdowns. We all stopped working effectively and had to stay at home message back in March 2020. And the first lockdown lasted for 6 weeks, where effectively a lot of businesses closed. Obviously the shops, restaurants, bars all shut down, and the message was for us to stay at home. I think that was a period where we all had to quickly mobilize ourselves into how do we actually facilitate the ability for our businesses to keep working, providing services to clients and selling products where appropriate. We went into a second lockdown in autumn 2020, and that's when the government brought in a 3-tier system and then moved up to a 4-tier system, and the message changed to stay local, don't travel into different areas to try and reduce the spread. Obviously, businesses at this point, we were more open, we were probably active and back in the office space, but with a lot of us still working online. I know the work I do with the University of Warwick, we switched everything across to being online working. All of the work were on Digital Catalyst and then other programs in the UK. All of this switched to being done remotely instead of face-to-face meetings and face-to-face webinars. So we've all had to change very quickly about how we physically interact. And obviously then in January of 2021, we went into a 3rd lockdown, which has been a slow stage lifting, and hopefully we are coming out fully as of next Monday. Obviously, there's been lots of research done around the impact on business as a result of this. They reckon from some research that was carried out by the Simply Business Report group, okay, that COVID had cost small businesses around £126.6 billion. And that is estimated to actually increase. We've got around 81% of small businesses says that they feel that the support from government hasn't been in place. Now that may be what happens in terms of self-employed, that may be what happens in terms of information that is given to them, how they are meant to interpret the rules into their industry. What is on a positive though, 65% say that the rollout of the vaccine has made them more confident about how their business is going to recover. So they can see that the vaccine rollout is a way of, okay, we can start to see a level of normality. Now it's hard to know what is normality as we move forward. Will people be more cautious? Will people in the workplace be more cautious? When we're socializing and we're meeting with clients, are we going to be more cautious because of what the whole country or the whole world has gone through? Most hit regions, obviously London has been hit, Scotland, the northeast, so where all of you are, okay, these are the areas where we've seen the biggest impact on business. Another positive in this, new entrepreneurs, there's been an enormous increase in people starting new businesses. So they've seen opportunities, they've seen holes in the market, they've generated new skills and decided that we're actually going to push forward with this and start their own ventures. Now, there is a piece of academic research by a guy called Shumter many, many years ago, and he plotted economic growth against changes in technology. So steam engines, petrochemicals, the combustion engine, and we're actually in the 5th wave of Shumter's model, which is all around technology and IT and digitization. And we always see when there's a major depression that at the bottom of that, we see the innovation and entrepreneurial spirit coming through, where people start to realize there's opportunity. So this is a really big positive, year on year increase, you know, and businesses are predicting that they need time to heal. Okay. They don't expect to see pre-pandemic levels returning until middle of next year. So 2022. The good thing is, in your case, Ian, you're still here. My business is still here. And so are lots of other businesses out there. Now, if we look at where we're seeing, okay, so this is some more stats from Statista, from information that has been pulled together. Okay, has temporary closed or paused. Obviously, arts, entertainment, accommodation, a lot of those businesses couldn't trade. They physically had to close or pause their trading. And then typical sectors we'd expect: construction, manufacturing, education, transport, scientific, technical. All of these areas have managed to continue throughout the pandemic. I know from my business, so I'm doing obviously consultancy on programs. I'm also out there delivering services to clients who are still marketing, who are still building websites, and I'm also delivering in the university. And I know from a personal perspective, the pandemic for me, I haven't seen a reduction in the level of work. If anything, I've seen more work across the period from March 2020. But I know there are lots of businesses where that is not the case. It's just that the sectors I work in, we have been able to continue to work. We've had to modify how we work. We've had to change what we are doing and how we work with clients and customers, and technology enables to do that. Obviously, Monday, the 19th, is a big day for England. It's when we're going to see an easing of all restrictions. So the need to wear masks, the needs to social distance, the limits on how close you can be to people inside the workplace is going to change. And obviously, different people respond in different ways to this. What we've got to be able to do as business owners is be able to know, what does this mean for my business? How are the people who will be in the office or potentially back in the office next week or next month, how are they going to respond to people being close? Because to be honest, we've all probably been locked away for a long period of time. And people will have different views, people will have different emotions. So as organizations and businesses, we have got to be prepared for how our business is going to operate once restrictions lift. Now, for some of you, you would have already been back in the office. People would have been working in the office, probably for quite a long time, with restrictions in place. You would have had clients coming to see you. You would have been out to see clients. I'm just going to let Teresa in. Hello, Teresa. You okay? You can talk to me. It's fine. Okay, well, we'll carry on anyway. So there's, your business may already be back in, but we hit another issue once we get into easing of all restrictions. You've got to start to understand, how are my staff, my employees going to feel? Are they going to be apprehensive? Are they going to be keen? Do they want to come back to the office? And we've had a clear change of message. We've had a clear change of message that responsibility now is ours. It's on us to decide, do we still wear a mask? Do we still ask people to give us distance? And as organizations, we need to be able to create a culture inside our business where people feel comfortable with how somebody else is going to handle that the responsibility starts with them. And it's going to be an interesting shift. It's going to be an interesting change for all of us. You know, we're already planning at the university, the teaching team that I'm in. We have meetings planned to plan for next year. And some of those staff members, they've got young children, they've got newborn children, they've got partners that haven't had jabs yet. They're cautious about coming onto campus because the rate at the university, while it was quite high amongst the students that we still have there, so they're cautious about coming into an environment that is safe, that we control who is there, we can easily social distance, we can even wear masks, but they're still unsure about coming in to the environment. So what do we know? Okay, one thing that has come out from all of this is technology works. Now, technology has always been an enabler. Technology allows us to do things in businesses quicker and smarter. Technology does not fix problems. It just helps us improve the way we actually go about doing things. So one thing that's come out from this is technology works. It has its issues, which we're going to look at some of those. But the fundamental, it has allowed us to communicate and collaborate. It's been able us to continue to work in the online environment. Now, obviously, we have tools that we have seen grow over the last 12 months. So, you know, Trello is a tool I used for many years. Slack, we use it with the students. But obviously, the increase in these tools and their usage has grown enormously, mainly because businesses had to find a way of bringing their staff together to allow their organization to still work. Obviously, Microsoft Teams was quite a raw application 15, 16 months ago. But as they've had to up their game, the same with Zoom, as they've had to up their game, the technology has had to grow and change over time. So Teams now is a really good platform to use for online meetings, as is Zoom. We've seen an increase in messaging tools. So people using WhatsApp more to have groups and communication within their teams inside organizations. And obviously FaceTime, you know, there are lots and lots of different platforms that people have started to use. And the key thing here from a business perspective is picking something that works for your organization, that your staff have the ability to handle, and it allows people to work together. If we look at Teams, okay, this is millions of users. So, you know, we can see the growth. 13 million users back in July 2019, 32 million users in March 2020. So this is when we hit lockdown, okay? By the end of April, we've jumped to 75. By April this year, we're up at 145 million users. Okay, the annoying part of this is we still have to have multiple platforms. So I use Teams with 2 or 3 clients. I use Zoom with other clients. We cannot join the two together. And that's probably something where the technology vendors need to think, is this something we actually need to start to implement? If we look at Zoom, and we would have all come across Zoom, because You know, there's only so many quizzes you can take with friends. Zoom, again, so grown and had to. There were major issues with Zoom right back at the start. There was questions over the security, the encryption between endpoints or different people inside a call. Okay, their revenue, $328 million revenue from February to April. That was a doubling of their yearly revenue in a short period of time in the first quarter of 2020. They've seen a 354% increase in customers where the business has 10 employees or more. Their stock value tripled last year as a result of the pandemic because of the need for people to go and find a tool that enabled them to see and talk and discuss and manage projects effectively whilst we are all remote from the office space. Now, in terms of what has changed, collaboration, video, audio, the sharing of documents, the ability to draw pictures or annotate documents and people see them live, this is nothing new. This has been in place for a long, long time. Message boards, chat boards, video tools. What has changed is we had a distinct reason to actually need it. Where would we be today if we didn't have tools like Teams and Zoom? If we didn't have the ability to move our systems and where we store our files in our business, if we didn't have the ability to put those into cloud storage tools, allowing people to securely access. So the technology has enabled us to carry on working pretty much to the same level, if not more productively than before the pandemic. Because as businesses, we've had to learn how to master technology and exploit it to actually move our organization forward. I was doing collaboration in automotive industry across Europe back in 1993. So back then, we could put documents into a shared repository that anybody in the world could get access to. We could have a video conference call, and at the same time, we could fire up an application and we can share it so everybody in the meeting could see what was happening on my screen. I could take a photo, I could drop it onto a whiteboard, I could send it in the meeting, and then somebody remotely could annotate and draw and make comments and also create documents with me from a remote location. So nothing has changed from a technology perspective. What has changed is our networks have become faster, our technology is better written, which means we can actually do more in the online environment. But collaboration has been in place for many, many years. So where do we go next? What are businesses going to be doing? Obviously, remote work is something that is here to stay. If businesses go back to everybody at their desk 9 till 5, we've probably missed an opportunity. Some research carried out of people during this period, 18% of people would work from home before the pandemic. During the pandemic, 56% were working from home. Obviously, we have some industries where working from home is not feasible because you physically have to be there. You physically have to go and manufacture or make or pack or load onto trucks. After the pandemic, 28% plan to continue working from home. I was having a discussion with a colleague of mine at the weekend, and he effectively has said if his business expects him to be full-time back in the office, he will be resigning from his position because of the flexibility of the remote working and the impact that has on his personal lifestyle. He likes the flexibility. He likes the fact he doesn't have to commute for an hour every day to get to the office. Okay. And there's a move that says offices in as we move forward will become spaces for facilitating collaboration. So where we might work remotely on our normal tasks, but when we're thinking about we need to bring people together to brainstorm ideas, to see what can happen, that may be best done in an office in a collaborative space. So the development of what they're classing as collaboration hubs, places that are set up to allow people to easily dial in and call people into meetings, but they have the ability to do face to face, both in person and online, in a environment that makes that conducive. So places that allow remote teams to come together with people who are physically sat in an office. The IT aspect for this, if now we have people who are spending time in offices but working remotely for some of the week, we need to have an IT network, an IT infrastructure that allows the seamless moving from off-site to on-site. So users don't see, which is probably why we've seen an enormous increase in tools outside of Zoom and Teams. So environments where give people desktops that they remotely access, but they're able to get access to all of their information from one place. Which means when I'm in the office, I'm doing exactly that. When I'm at home, I just log into this remote machine that provides me my full working environment and access to all of the file shares and systems that I need from a remote desktop. Obviously, if remote working is here to stay, security, enabling security on systems becomes a big headache for businesses. So these are things you need to start to think about. Can you facilitate, as an organization, people being remote for 3 days and in the office for 2? Maintaining productivity. So if we look at what people have said, okay, how well can you perform your job at home? Before the pandemic, 70% well or very well. After the pandemic, 81%. Some people thrive in that remote location. One of the things we've got to look at is we've got to change. Productivity is not the issue. Where we're going to see the issues in business is the engagement of the people in the teams, in the business that are now remote. Because that team cohesion, that interaction between your employees and members of teams is extremely important. We need to be able to mix both in the office and remote collaboration teams. To keep engagement, if people are engaged, if people feel part of the business and people feel valued, they're going to excel in their role. So team-wide events, and we've seen this happen in organizations. You may have done this in your own business, where you have everybody gets together on a Friday afternoon just for a catch up and a chat to discuss. You may do it every day just to discuss with people, to find out where they're at and what's going on in their lives, because we're now missing that because we're not doing that across the desk in the typical office environment. You know, there is still room for improvement. The pandemic, the big shift to work from home has shown quite a lot of areas where, as individuals as well as businesses, we need to start thinking how we facilitate the environments in which people work. Okay, so if we just look at some of these: background noise when we're in meetings, there's a dog, there's work being done in the street outside. My neighbor is doing work in their house and they've got drills and hammers going on. So we have to be able to handle that. Obviously, internet speed becomes a major issue. People voices breaking up, video disappearing, people dropping completely out of meetings because their internet isn't capable of handling that environment. Obviously, one of the big ones are multiple people in the same house. Bear in mind, we didn't just go, oh, I'm working from home today. If you've got a wife who works as well, they're working from home. If you've got older kids, they're also working from home. Let's throw in, you've got children in school and now they're working from home. So there's a need for extra equipment. There's definitely a need for better quality broadband that can handle multiple people in the same household working remotely. So we have a lot of issues. And where do we sit doing that? There's lots of talk out there where companies have changed their office space. They've downsized their office space. They've taken a view to cancel their office space, which is all well and good for people who run businesses because they're probably in a house where they have the ability to facilitate a room that is a home office. However, not many people do that. The amount I've been on training courses and the person delivering the training course is doing it remotely and they're doing it from their bedroom, or they're doing it from their kitchen table, or they're doing it from a small table on their landing because they've found a space where they can put their computer. Most people, or a lot of people, probably don't have a physical space where they can set up an office. And in this instance, if there was 2 or 3 of you all trying to work in the same location, we're already getting background noise. We're also getting an environment which is not conducive for work. Your furniture could be wrong. I've done some work with a client and one of their staff has a long-term back problem because the type of chair they sat on was a kitchen chair. It was a wooden hard chair, which is probably perfectly fine for a couple of hours here and a couple of hours there. But to sit on it day in, day out at a machine working, it's caused a long-term back issue. And these are things we need to start thinking about. Additional things we see: access to key staff, being able to get the person you need to talk to into a meeting. And there's also too many meetings. Now that may be people who need the interaction calling meetings because they need the interaction with the fellow people in their organization. But we can have meeting overload, one Zoom call to another, and then onto a Teams call, and then into delivering a seminar or webinar. And we have to learn how to manage the time better. Obviously, it brings about a new way to work. We have to be thinking, how can we run a meeting and not have people get upset? So people interrupting, jumping in partway through, people muting themselves, okay, or not muting themselves. So people where there's lots of background noise, or they're eating their dinner and they haven't muted. So all of this becomes issues, and we have to, because it can be quite off-putting. a distracting environment. So there's people moving around behind. There's things going on behind. So we have to be able to develop, this stuff, this way of working is going to stay. It may not be the norm, but it's going to be part of the mix inside organizations where we're going to be holding meetings in online environments. It might be we have 10% of the team are dialed in because they still feel cautious about coming into the work environment. But we've got to be able to facilitate that, and we have to be able to make them feel part of what we are doing. So using chat features and getting people to use that to ask questions, which can then be picked up later. But we have to develop a culture inside businesses that facilitates good quality, effective meetings that have, in a university sense, we would call it as a blended environment. So we have some people face to face and we're blending in the online activities as well. Obviously, there are big positives to all of the online learning, and we'll pick up on some of those in a second. So what is the problem? What problems are we going to hit as we move into this new area? As we move into this mix of how our businesses are operating. Obviously, the first one is lack of interaction. And we've all seen this. We've all seen this in online meetings and online webinars. We've all seen the people who they turn the camera off, they mute their microphone, and they don't actually do any input. Okay, there's a lack of interaction. And then that might be because they're not engaged. They've been called to a meeting and they can't see the point as to why they are there. I know in the educational world, trying to teach students that are global, we have no comprehension unless we physically ask them questions by name as to whether they're actually physically listening or they just logged onto the platform. Because they turn their cameras off and they mute their microphones. So impromptu discussions to fix a problem. In the office environment, this is pretty much, this happens. The overhearing a conversation that's happening 2 desks away. Somebody's got an issue. There's a problem that needs addressing and you have a fix. That impromptu discussion, well, you could handle it like this. We lose that in the online world because that conversation is not physically happening. If we're purely in an online environment, the lack of team bonding starts to drop off. Now, in the team at the university, we were a close-knit team. We worked together, and our courses and classes ran at the same time, even though the topics we were talking about were different. And we've seen a distinct change in the last 12 months of delivering through an online environment, that the bonding of the team has changed. We have ended up pretty much going into 3 separate delivery teams because we typically work on the same modules together. Whereas before we would interact with each other because we were in the same building. We would go and interact with the students in somebody else's class. But in the online world, that doesn't happen because we're not next to each other anymore. So we've lost a level of team bonding, which means we're losing that bouncing off of ideas and generating discussion between us. Now, when we get back to being able to meet face to face, we probably will blend with some online activities with students because we've seen the knock-on effect of students as well. That they need a lot more information. We have to handle them differently. because we're not getting that face to face with them to work out where they're at. So we're losing discussion and we're losing generation of ideas, taking things forward and moving it on. So, this whole remote working, yes, you may be great at it as an organization, but think about, how am I going to bring the idea generation and discussion back together? Do we need to be bringing in some face to face in the office meetings with people in order to regenerate these type of ideas? Okay, there's invisible social capital that is built up over hundreds of personal interaction that gets drained as everyone is remotely working. These interactions are so critical to company culture and employee happiness that you have to find ways to instill them in a virtual environment, but also don't neglect the power this brings on face to face. We have a whole area around social care, and we've seen this across the last 12 months. Social well-being of you as an individual. How are you feeling? Where are you at? What stresses are you under? Remote working naturally brings in a sense of isolation. People feel disconnected because they're sat in a room on their own. They're not having those impromptu discussions. They're not having the banter with the people in the office. The online engagement is not fully the same. Okay, people aren't sharing their issues and their problems and the things they are going through, and when that starts to happen, that's major problems inside of business, especially in a team. It's very hard to see through a screen if somebody is struggling. It's very hard to tell because you're not sat with them and you're not listening and you're not observing them fully, which would happen inside the office. So as organizations, this is one enormous area that we need to start thinking about if some of the teams stay remote in their working habits. We see major issues around scheduling. Remote work requires us to arrange our work and private time in an entirely different way so we can handle the distractions, we can manage a work-life balance. Okay, more flexibility with work schedules. We need to be able to manage that and manage the activity so we are productive, so we're meeting our deadlines. Some companies have set in their remote working environment, they have set limiting online times. So between 11 o'clock and 3 o'clock, that is when we expect you to be logged in to the online environments so we can talk and collaborate and discuss. Outside of that, that's when you go and do your typical work, the tasks, the activities, where you don't need to collaborate with other people in the organization. It is easy to work all day because we're no longer having to commute. Commuting is gone. It's brilliant. So we're running a module into Hong Kong this weekend for the University of Warwick. And typically we would get on a plane and fly. We'd spend 2 days getting there with our rest days. And then we'd go into weekend delivery. We'd go from 8:30 in the morning till 7:30 at night. We do that for 2 weekends. We do that the first weekend, then we'd stay in Hong Kong for the week, and then we'd start on the Friday night and we'd do the following Saturday and Sunday. That now is, we start a session at 3 o'clock in the morning and we teach them through to about 12 o'clock. No commute. But the downside to that is you're not in front of the people, you're not seeing how they're learning, and you're not recognizing if there are problems, if their facial expressions are showing you that they're not grasping it. But we're taking out a lot of wasted time with us being on planes and a lot of additional costs. It is easy to work all day. My office is about 10 meters from my bedroom. So I can get up, get dressed, and go straight into the office. I haven't got to think about driving 35, 45 minutes to a client or into the university. I've just got to walk across the landing. So I can get more done in a day because I'm not having to factor in travel time. The problem is we tend to start earlier and we tend to finish earlier. We need to be thinking, just because I'm online doesn't mean the rest of my team is online. So being conscious of how other people do work. Businesses needs to change what they focus on. And the focus needs to go from, am I seeing you, to have you completed the task? So there has to be a change in how we manage. There has to be a change in how we work with people. Okay, we need to recognize that different people work in different ways. The normal, this is a great opportunity for businesses to change what the normal was, to give responsibility to workers to deliver the tasks that they've been allocated, and to do that when they are more comfortable. And if that means they're working from 6 o'clock in the morning to 1 o'clock in the afternoon, if they're completing the tasks, they're completing the goals and objectives that have been put on them, we need to allow that flexibility to happen inside the business. We're probably going to see a push towards a change from a 9 to 5 type mentality where you're sat at a desk and I can see you. Because we need to now embrace what we've started. At the end of the day, vast majority of businesses, probably the tasks where people can work remote, they're probably seeing those tasks completed. They're seeing happier staff because the staff are being able to work in an environment which they are comfortable. So we've got to be able to plan, how do we maintain culture? How do we maintain productivity? How do we keep our staff engaged in this new working environment? And it's going to take time. It's going to take talking and discussing it with your staff and employees. Where are they at? How do they want to work? What would they like to see? Obviously, we have to have some level of control because we still have a job to deliver. We still have objectives that have to be met, but it's finding the balance with your staff members. Okay. We also need to realize that we're not all the same. We all work very differently. Some people in your organization will probably be ready to get back to the office because they miss that interaction. They don't cope with the isolation. They need to see people because that's how they thrive and that's how they work. So, in companies where they've already made a decision, the office is an overhead. We've worked fine for 12 months. You need to be back into the office. You could see people leave because they actually need the office environment. That's how they thrive. That's how they work. But then you've got the ones who are enjoying remote working because they've lost the long commute. Now, there was a really interesting article on the news the other day, and it was about the chief of Morgan Stanley, the bank, and he's come out and said, if you want a New York NYC salary, you need to be in NYC. Okay, and it's quite an interesting article. So this is somebody who leads Morgan Stanley Bank making a clear statement. If you want the salary of a city banker, I expect you to be in the city. He also went on to say something along the lines of, if you can go to a restaurant in New York City, you can come to the office and work. And to a level, he's correct. If I'm willing to go into an office, if I'm willing to go into a restaurant in the city and meet friends and socialize, then what's the difference between me going into the office to work? Okay, so it's going to be interesting to see how that one plays out. But there's something in there. Okay, remote employees appreciate avoiding long commutes or saving money on workplace parking. Now, if I'm paid a salary that includes remuneration for the fact I've got to travel into a city, if the salary is higher because it's a central London job, if the salary is higher because there are costs involved, workplace and the driving, how are people going to respond if we now reduce salaries because of that? And these are things you need to start thinking about. Obviously, people will love the idea that I'm not having to commute anymore. My car between March and probably December did something like 1,500 miles. It did not move. Saved me an enormous amount on fuel. And these are things we need to think about, because that lack of commuting really has changed. There's a knock-on effect. People aren't driving, people aren't going into the office, which means people aren't eating from the local sandwich bar or going to the local cafes or restaurants to buy their food. They're not buying from a Starbucks or Costa's a coffee. So, as we change our working habits, economy-wise, there's going to be a knock-on, because these businesses haven't got the people in order to make it viable for those places to stay open. So there has to be a shift in those organisations as to how do we maintain and how do we keep ourselves going. People working from home, managing your time. Okay, working when you feel comfortable. Okay, better management of time to get tasks done. All of these are things that are going to be issues. How do we make it work? Well, we need to now, or we probably should have earlier, be asking our staff, where are you at? How are you feeling? What's going on? Can we help? And trying to recognize and bring in the well-being aspect. Okay, and to do that in a non-confronting manner, because it's very hard to see that across a screen. That takes a conversation. And businesses, probably the cultural side of this is we probably need to have a major shift in being more open to recognize where staff are from a well-being perspective, to care for them, to look out for them. And that will be a big change in some organizations. Okay, we need to introduce routines. We need to find ways of preventing people from overworking, because it is so easily done. A lack of boundaries. by the nature of the work practice. Longer hours, not taking breaks, being sat there because, typically you would have gone out at lunchtime with your colleague, but no, your colleague's now 40 miles away. You're at home on your own. So you just work through lunch, or you work later, or you get up early and work. So we need to start bringing in breaks. If we're having online meetings, we need to schedule in, okay, we're going to take a 10-minute break now. We're going to take a 15-minute comfort break. We're going to stop for lunch. We're not going to work through. And it's just creating clear boundaries around how we operate. Creating clear boundaries around contact time. Now, there's a big thing in the news the other week about should companies be banned from sending out of hours communications to staff? And it's a question I'm not even going to attempt to answer or give my view, but it's something we do need to think about. Just because you're working doesn't mean everybody else in your organization is in this new remote area. One thing that has come out that has to happen is we need to be improving communication. We need to be clear on the tasks we give people to complete. So clear objectives of what is expected. Clear tasks, communication, and deadlines. Now, for many, many years, even in face-to-face environments, one of the biggest things I have heard when I'm working with companies is the lack of communication. Why is the business doing this? Why is this changing? Why is this happening? Now, in this new remote environment, we've got to make sure that we are communicating better to our staff, keeping them informed, because they're already remote and that already has the potential for them to feel isolated and cut off from the business. So this is why some organizations, they will have managers, they will have people who check in with their staff members every day or every other day. And they talk about what's happening because they're interested in the well-being, and they're making sure they're communicating things that are happening in the organization. We also need to be able to bring teams together, definitely in an online world. We have to have ways to gel the team. So again, people don't feel isolated. We have to build common purpose. This is down to communication. We have to be ready to create a new culture. We have definitely seen a shift in how organizations operate. The worst thing we can do is probably just go straight back to what we were in 2019. Organizations need to change, because if we don't change, we don't create and capitalize on the culture that we've been able to build through remote working and flexibility, and people getting the job done, people feeling more comfortable, people feeling more engaged. If we don't continue with that, those staff will leave. And they will go and find companies where the culture is more how they've had it for the last 18 months. We need to be looking at how do we gel teams. So we need to be bringing together ideas of people getting together, whether it's online or face-to-face, not work-related activity, but more of a social, engaging activity. So coming up to the end, okay, what will you be doing? Have you started to think about how your organization is going to change as a result of no restrictions on Monday? Some things for you to go away and think about and ponder. How many of you have spoken to your staff in anticipation of people coming back to the office. I know at the University of Warwick, it is like, okay, you can come back to the office when you feel ready. We can't do face-to-face meetings till after the 19th. But at some point, they've got to go to people who have worked remotely since last March and say to them, we need you back in the office, which is going to cause problems. If they haven't gone out already in anticipation and asked people, how would you like to see the return to the office happen, it can cause it will cause major problems. I know of one company that I've been on some sessions with, and they've expanded their team over lockdown. The problem is their office is not big enough for all the team now to go to, which means they've already started planning this. They've gone out to their staff and asked, when we can return to the office, what are your thoughts? What are you thinking? How can we as a business make it comfortable for you to come back to the office? And they've got the mix of people. They've got people who are really happy to work remote and those who need to come back into the office. So they're going for either getting more office space or they're going for phased working. So people will say, okay, these are my days in the office, these are my days working from home. Because they also know as an organization, they need the interaction between people as the nature of the job they do. So they're bouncing off ideas and they're discussing problems and issues. So they've got to facilitate that as well. So have you spoke to your staff in anticipation? How do they feel? What are they thinking about the new way of working once we're back or possibly back in offices? Do you have clear plans on how you're going to handle work from home or the office? Is it going to be, we expect you in the office on certain days? Or you're allowed to work from home, and then if you fancy coming in the office, just come in. So it's more ad hoc. But then if you have a space problem, ad hoc will not work because everybody might turn up on the same day and you can't get them at their desks. Have your staff been able to accomplish their tasks remotely to the same level as they would if they were sat at a desk opposite you? So is the role, is the task they are doing something that can actually and has proven that it works extremely well remotely? Are you just asking them to come back to the office? They may not want to, just because you want to be able to sit and watch them do their task. These are things you need to be asking yourself. Are you ready for staff to fully return? Have you got things in place? Are you ready for the well-being and the cautiousness of some of them? Are you going to are you ready to handle the fact that somebody comes up and puts an arm on somebody's shoulder, but that person is not ready for that level of interaction, and handling the fallout and the emotional aspects that come with that? Are you planning flexibility? Are you planning to mix it up? Some people in these days, some people in these days. You need to get your mindset ready. What if staff would rather not return to the workplace? They want to stay remote because they're not commuting an hour. They're saving on fuel. They actually get more things done when they're remote. Are you going to insist that people come in? But these are things you should be going, this is going to happen. This is going to be a question that as a business we have to handle. Now, the one thing we know for sure is technology works. That person has been doing that job for the last 18 months remote. That person has fulfilled their task for the last 18 months remote. Am I going to tell them they have to come back to the office because that's what I expect as the owner of a business? Or am I going to change culture, and am I going to create an environment where we have some control with flexibility, where people feel valued because you're allowing them to work remote at the times that they are comfortable, and change the culture to one where people are engaged and putting their all into your business to move it forward. Now, that's things for you to think about. We've gone through, and to anybody listening, we've gone through the past 18 months and we've come out the other side. So as business owners, if that's been hard, then well done. If it's been a struggle, well done. You've got your business through the pandemic. It's now, how do we move forward as we start to fully open up with the dropping of restrictions? Are you ready for your staff being ready to come back to the workplace? Have you got things in place to enable that to happen and keep them engaged and keep them infused? My personal view is, I think remote working will stay. I think it should be part of somebody's, an employee's, flexibility. So the ability to work remote if they wish, but with we would like, when we're having these type of meetings, we'd like you into the office space. And also the thing of, we'd like to see you in the office for a certain amount of time in a week, mainly so you're getting the interaction with the colleagues and you're bouncing off and your ideas storming, and those questions that just happen to come up in conversations. And I think we're going to see a mix of both ways of working. One thing I hope we don't see is the return to how it was in 2019, where you're sat there from 9 till 5, and we see the culture of people who are packing down their machines at 10 to 5 because I finish at 5 and I'm going to be left on the dot. Well, that's probably an issue with how the culture of the organization works. And I think we now have a chance as businesses to reset the cultures in the organizations that we operate, to start to bring the flexibility and the work-life balance in place so people can work and be more engaged and more infused and more happy about where they are working. And that's down to us as business owners to be able to instill this changing culture. Now, just to go through some bits, obviously there are additional masterclasses you can get involved with. So we have a developing a cyber secure business that is running on the 16th of July. And that's probably the start date. So if you're interested in that, then I suggest you contact the Digital Catalyst support team, and they will book you a place on this. We also have a webinar running on the 21st and 28th. It's a two-part webinar, all around paid advertising, search and display. So that will be helping you understand what it is. Will also be helping you understand how to make it work for you. So gold mine or money pit. And from experience, paid advertising can very easily be a money pit if not set up correctly. So the gentleman who's taking these sessions, he will take you through this and give you some tips on how to enable this effectively. Obviously, Digital Catalyst Specialist support is still there. If you've been on many of these talks, you would have seen this before. This is the pathway. We do an assessment of your business from a digital perspective. Then we bring in expert support. And then from that, we're doing plans. We're either pushing you into brokerage or we're helping you select technology. Projects that Digital Catalyst can assist with, digital marketing, operations to cloud, cybersecurity, a lot of these fit in with remote working, operations moving to cloud, getting your infrastructure correct, cybersecurity, all tools, digital environment. Okay, so bespoke one-to-one support, assisting aspects of all digital. If it's got digital in it, the project can assist. Brokering for grants, hand-holding to get you started, okay, helping you find the right suppliers and becoming a better IT customer. Okay, eligibility for the program, you're in Humber, small, medium-sized business, less than 250 employees, okay, trading for a year, etc. And you apply and then you're accepted onto the program. If you want to know more information, this is the contact details. Now, the masterclasses and the webinars, I would suggest at the moment, this is your first port of call. The program itself for the one-to-one support is fully subscribed. We are expecting an extension, but we're just waiting for details and an actual start date and end date for that extension. So if you are interested in getting one-to-one support around how digital technologies can be used in your business, then I would still register interest, because as soon as the extension comes, they will then start allocating out to the businesses that have registered their expression of interest. And do it that way. Okay, so registering, where do we go to do that? Okay, and you can also on that website find out what grants are available, advisory sessions, and lots of useful information and case studies and previous webinars that you can go and play and get some further learning that you can use to input into your business. Okay, I'd like to thank you all for coming. If you're watching this back on playback, I want to thank you for spending the time to listen and watch. And if you have any questions, please contact the team or send them across to me. That's perfectly fine. Okay, thank you for your time.